Today is the last day of the three-day conference hosted by the Competition Commission Conference in Cape Town that's been happening this week. The conference is meant to look into the issues of competition. The theme for the conference is the contribution of competition policy to economic growth. So as part of the debates that have been taking place, the conference is looking into the effectiveness of competition enforcement in South Africa to date. Let's cross over to our reporter, Bulelani Phillips. He's in Cape Town. He's been following this and he's going to be joined by a guest to talk a little bit more about this. Bulelani, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Leanne, and good morning to the viewers, and warm welcome here at the V&A Waterfront in Cape Town, where the 10th annual conference on competition law, economics and policy conference is taking place. And the objective of this conference is to look at ways of clamping down on anti-competitive behavior, including price fixing and collusion. And of course, for you, the viewers at home, it's important for such a conference to be known, because it looks at how, there is collusion practices in areas such as panel beaters, furniture removal companies, and we've seen also the recent, construction industry scandals post the 2010 World Cup, and earlier in 2006 there was also the scandal around the issue of price fixing. And this year's conference is going to be looking at ways of competition law and economic growth. And shortly we'll be talking to the Competition Commission to look at ways of how they are clamping down on this anti-competitive behavior, as well as the tools that they are applying in terms of ensuring that they eradicate this behavior. Now, joining me to talk to us more about this issue is the Acting Deputy Commissioner of the Competition Commission, Mr. Hadin Rachisusu. Warm welcome to you, sir, and thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, Bulelani.
Firstly, for the benefit of the viewers at home, what is the Competition Commission?
The Competition Commission is a regulatory body which was established, with the Competition Act of 1999. So we regulate competition in South Africa, and for the benefit of consumers, looking at ways and means for companies to compete and be competitive in the South African economy.
And the issue of competition law, how is it advancing economic growth given the current challenges of South Africa?
Competition law is becoming an increasingly important law globally. All countries that are serious about growth and competitiveness have adopted these laws. So it's very, very important that we look at the behavior of our companies and how they contribute to the growth of our economies. So by stamping out anti-competitive practices, we get the companies to innovate, be better companies, and produce better. In that way, it helps in contributing welfare to the consumer. I think if we stamp out the cartel, say for example in bread, if prices drop, it's 1 rand more, for example, to the consumer, which stretch the rand of that particular consumer.
Now, obviously, we've seen various incidents and anecdotes of competition abuses. Can you give us a sense of how rife is the problem in South Africa, and perhaps maybe what are the sanctions that the Competition Commission is meting out in terms of trying to discourage this kind of practices?
So the South African economy, in fact, is not only by the studies that we've conducted in South Africa in the Commission. Even groups such as the World Bank constantly look at our markets, and comparing to other markets globally, most of our sectors are still highly concentrated. So you have oligopolistic structures in where you have 1 or 2 players in these spaces. Where you have, in some cases, more players, the unfortunate thing is we're finding that these parties tend to collude, which by the way, as I speak to you now, we have over 70 cartel cases that are before the Competition Tribunal, and over 183 cases that we launched this year alone on competition, on cartel conduct. So this is a rife conduct which I think needs to be stamped out in a country.
And the sanctions, just give us a sense of what kind of sanctions do you issue out to companies that are found involved in these practices?
In terms of the Competition Act, we can levy fines of up to 10% of a firm's turnover. So that's the sort of penalty you would get in terms of the legal instruments we have in the country.
And the issue of imprisonment of directors of these companies, is that something that's on the cards?
This is something, and I think it's a very, very good question, that because recently in April, I think President passed a Competition Amendment Act which criminalizes cartel conduct. So you're going to find that people in management authority in these companies that get involved in cartels, if they are liable, if you can point that a specific individual was involved, these individuals are going to be jailed, and for probably a period of up to 10 years in jail, or with an alternative of a fine. But these are really, really stiff measures that have been introduced in our country. In fact, this is something that many other countries have followed. I mean, the US, this is a criminalized conduct, Australia, the UK, and many other countries.
And now, how are you applying competition law in relation to breaking down barriers of access for small players because of the dominance of these companies that are involved in this price fixing and collusion?
This is a very, very important in our economy, especially given the growth environment we find ourselves in. So with this multitude of markets dominated by a lot of players, we have a very huge challenge to ensure that we at least remove barriers in those markets by stamping out anti-competitive practices. But barriers to entry go beyond your anti-competitive practices by firms. There are also regulatory barriers. So there's a lot of advocacy work that we do with government departments and a host of other stakeholders.
Mr. Hadin Rachisusu is the Deputy Acting Commissioner with the Competition Commission, giving us a sense of the kind of issues that are happening here on this last day of this conference, certainly making headlines in the local papers. On that note, Leanne, I will take it back to the studio.